So I want to talk about something that I haven't seen many other people discuss before, and that's the psychological aspect of learning math. And so, obviously, you have the intellectual aspect of learning math, where you're just trying to understand the material and increase your knowledge on the topic. But in my opinion, as someone who's done an undergraduate degree in applied math and has spent an ungodly amount of time trying to learn math and succeeding to a decent degree, I can say, at least from my perspective, there's 100% a psychological aspect to it. And let me explain what I mean. So, for a lot of people, they have a psychological blocking factor which prevents them or discourages them from learning math. You talk to a lot of people, they'll tell you, I'm not a math person, or, math never comes easy to me. And so they've imposed this mental constraint on themselves that either they don't like math or they're not a math person, or for one reason or another, learning math is not something they're able to do or willing to do. So, for a great many people, I'd say probably the majority of people, even the majority of people who are in a field which demands a high level of competence in math, like STEM, I would say the majority of people say they don't like it or they're not good at it. And that really is counterproductive, because if you tell yourself you're bad at something, you are going to take that and transmute it into reality. And what I mean is that if you say, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard, then you're not going to find the willpower within yourself to put forth enough effort to actually do it. And you never will know whether or not it is or is not possible for you, because you've mentally signed yourself out of ever being able to accomplish it. That's what I mean when I say, when people try to learn math, one of the greatest blocking factors and one of the things that is ultimately one of the greatest obstacles that many people have to overcome is the mental aspect of it. So many people just straight up have a negative connotation with math, and they have a negative view of their relationship with math and their ability to do math. I'm going to talk about the case that it was for me. So I actually liked math. I really enjoyed learning it. I found it very interesting, but still there were many psychological impasses which I had to get past, which made it difficult to progress throughout my math education. And so, really, the bulk of your time doing an undergraduate math degree is going to be spent feeling stupid and being stuck. And so, largely, your ability to complete it is a function of how high is your tolerance for feeling dumb, and how high is your tolerance for being stuck on something and just hammering away at it for hours or days or weeks. And really, if you have a high tolerance for that, then you have a much greater chance of succeeding in getting a degree in math, or even just learning any sort of high level math. But it certainly is not without its mental implications. So I mean, if I was spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day in the library learning, and maybe there were some days where I would be working on a problem or a theorem or something of that nature, and I could work on it for 8 hours and basically feel like I made no progress. And it's crazy how mentally draining that is, to put forth insane amounts of effort and to work on something that's so mentally taxing and feel as though you've not made any progress at all. It's very easy to get into a negative mindset and sort of spiral when you're doing that, because oftentimes you look around at other people and they don't seem to be having the same issue. And so you begin to question, am I stupid? Is this not for me? Am I not good enough? Am I not trying hard enough? And it's very easy to have all these negative thoughts overtake you and make it the process of learning sort of grind to a halt. And so what I would encourage is, if you're someone who's doing any sort of STEM related thing and you find math difficult, or if you're undertaking the endeavor of doing a full-on degree in math like I did, you need to make sure that you are in control of the psychological and mental component of it. Because if you don't, what am I trying to say here? If you don't regulate the way learning math and being stuck and struggling with math affects your view of yourself, affects your confidence, and affects your mental state, then it can very easily send you on a downward spiral. I know sometimes when I was extremely overworked and I just felt like I was making no progress, it it was very easy to start to foster self-doubt and wonder, what's the point of all of this? Maybe this is not worth it. Like, why am I doing this to myself? I could very easily be doing something else that's a lot easier, and I'd be getting a much better reward signal rather than, hey, I just spent 10 hours on a problem just to only complete like half of it. Yeah, the spurts of dopamine are pretty intermittent. I mean, when you get something done, it's nice for a couple minutes, maybe even an hour if it's a big problem, and then you're back to probably another 10 hours of grinding and being stuck and just going through the exhaustion of trying something over and over and over until it succeeds. And honestly, let me think about this. My sophomore and junior year, that was when my coursework was the heaviest. That was when I was getting the least amount of sleep and I was working the hardest. Um, and I started to kind of go a little insane, I'm not going to lie, because I would basically wake up, go to my classes, go to the library, stay there till like midnight, and then I would go, if you guys are from the South, cookout. I would go to cookout. That would be like my only thing I would look forward to in the whole day. I'd go to cookout, get my food, and then I'd basically just come home and sleep and rinse and repeat that for months on end until the semester was over. And looking back on it, I genuinely don't know how I did it, because the mental strain of A, doing that much work, but B, also doing that much work and oftentimes working and toiling for the whole day just to not be rewarded is pretty crazy. So I started to basically, I realized that the mental aspect of it was something that I needed to address. It wasn't enough just to put in effort. I needed to make sure that I had a good mental relationship with the work that I was doing and that I felt confident and that I wasn't allowing a bad mental state or a lack of confidence or anything like that affect my ability to do it, because I knew I could do it. But oftentimes you do bad on a test or you work on a problem and you just can't find the solution and you start to doubt yourself, right? So when I was deep in the trenches, when I was like really deep in the trenches, probably junior years was the worst it got. I used to, I was also extremely isolated during this time because I was doing so much work, and so I didn't get to see my friends that often. And there actually be some times where I would go a couple of days without seeing my roommates because I'd be getting back so late and just barely making it to class in the morning. But I digress. The what I started doing was trying to create a image of confidence about my ability to do math and essentially gaslight myself into thinking that I could do anything and that no matter how difficult the problem was or how overwhelmed I felt, that I'd be able to get it done. And saying this out loud, it sounds absolutely insane, but you guys have to understand how crazy it was when I was taking like 6 classes and just had absolutely zero free time. I was doing research at the same time and was just hammering work for weeks on end without light at the end of the tunnel. So I used to tell myself, I tried to build up this image in my head. I would tell myself, I'm a mathematical genius. And I would say it to myself probably several hundred times a day. I would just say it over and over. I would just repeat it over and over to myself. And what I was doing is I was trying to create this positive reinforcement about how I viewed myself and my abilities. And I thought by just saying that over and over and over, I would eventually come to believe it. And it would even manifest itself in my output and my ability to learn math. And I think I got that phrase from the movie A Beautiful Mind. If you guys haven't seen that, it's a pretty good movie. It's about this mathematician who was, I believe, diagnosed with schizophrenia. He's like the founder of the research area of game theory. And so I remember, I don't know if this was actually in the movie or if I looked this up after I watched the movie, but basically when he was being recommended to his PhD program, his advisor at whatever school he went to before then, he went to Princeton for his PhD. So whoever his like mentor or advisor was before he did his PhD program wrote this really famous recommendation letter. And the recommendation letter just said, I recommend John Nash be admitted to the mathematics program at Princeton University, and the only reason that he gave was just like he's a mathematical genius. You have to accept him. Like, you just take my word for it. This guy's the GOAT. And so when I was super overworked and just overwhelmed and feeling stuck, I would just repeat that to myself over and over and over. And it sounds so crazy, but until you've been in a state like that where you're just in a haze and you're just working crazy hours and barely sleeping, you won't understand why I felt the need to do this. But those of you guys who have been through it, I think you understand what I'm getting at. So generally, what I was doing was I was repeating this to myself over and over and over because I thought if I said it to myself enough, I would begin to believe it. And I built up this perception of myself mentally as someone who could handle anything and was always going to succeed no matter what, and just had the aptitude to handle whatever was being thrown at me in the realm of math. And genuinely, I started to believe it because I was putting in so much work and I was just hammering it day in and day in and day out that I started to get, very good results. I would usually get the top grades in the class. When I graduated, I don't know, there was like maybe 30 math majors in my graduating class. I don't know if I had the highest GPA. I mean, I didn't get a B in any class. So, I mean, maybe if somebody else had a 4.0, then I didn't have the highest. But genuinely, I think I was pretty much at the top. And I was also given a medal by the mathematics department for my graduating class. So I was recognized as like academic achiever with that. But what I'm getting at, though, is that when I was in my sophomore and junior year, and I was in the trenches taking these classes and just feeling stupid and overwhelmed and overworked, I repeated this mantra to myself that I was a mathematical genius, and I gaslit myself until I actually believed it. And as I started to, get the results, that started to reinforce this delusion in my mind that that's actually what I was. Obviously, I'm not actually a mathematical genius, but you have to understand, for me to be able to put up with the amount of work and stress that I was under, I had to create this delusion in my head to get it done. So, really what I'm talking about here is that I figured this was the way that I could construct a positive self-image and give myself confidence and endurance to do whatever I needed to do to get this done academically. And so as I clocked more and more hours and just worked my ass off, like I was saying, I started to get the results, and that reinforced this delusion that I was building in my head. And it honestly started to snowball to a point where I was like, yeah, I actually am doing the best out of everyone. Like I am living up to this delusion that I've crafted for myself. And you guys might think I'm crazy. I think I am a little crazy. I did go crazy for probably 1 or 2 years during that time frame, but I just think if I didn't do that for myself, my results would have been a whole lot different. If I told myself, man, I just suck at math, I can't do this, or, this is too hard, this is too stressful, this is beyond me, I can't make it happen, then I wouldn't be where I am now and I wouldn't have gotten the results that I got. But because I decided to basically gaslight myself into believing that I was the best at what I was doing, I actually kind of made it happen. I sort of transmuted this delusion into reality a tiny bit. And so the moral of this video is not that you have to do what I did and go insane and gaslight yourself into thinking you're a genius. But what I'm saying is that if you have a negative relationship with math, if you think that you're the sort of person that can't learn math or shouldn't learn math, or you're not good at it, or you have any of this negative self-doubt that you're imposing on yourself, you have to find a way to get rid of it. Because if you constrain yourself mentally, it's going to seep into the physical and the material. So if you mentally believe that you're not good enough, or that it's too difficult, or you're not smart enough, that's going to be what ends up manifesting in reality. I really do believe that. A lot of people, there's many instances of people doing things that are very remarkable because they didn't know that it was supposed to be hard. And so that's kind of how you have to treat math. You can't overthink. You can't put yourself into a box of, oh, I'm the sort of person that can't do X or Y or Z. You have to find a way to instill confidence in yourself, even if it's delusion. If you need to be delusional for a little bit and do what I did until you can actually build the confidence and have the repertoire of things that you've done to support that confidence, then do that. But really what I'm getting at is that anybody can learn math. Anybody can learn really difficult math. Anybody can do what I did. I really do believe that. But for a great many people, the constraint is a mental constraint. It's not a hard constraint on their intellectual abilities. It's a constraint on how they view themselves, their confidence, and the way that they talk about themselves, either verbally or just mentally. You know, what's the quote where people say we suffer a lot more in imagination than reality? That's exactly the case here. If you can stop yourself from suffering in the imagination when it comes to learning math, and can even turn that on its head and start to gas yourself up and get yourself to believe like, hey, you know, I'm the GOAT, dude. I can make this happen. Like, I can learn this. Then you're going to see the results start to come in. This is a slightly different video. I don't know how it will be received. I'm interested to see what other people think. I've got plenty of other stories like this of crazy stuff that I did while I was doing my math degree. But yeah, that's the message I wanted to convey, is that there's 100% a mental and a psychological aspect to learning math. And once you recognize that, you can identify whether or not that's something that's holding you back. And if you understand it's holding you back, you can take whatever steps you have to do to change it, and you're going to be shocked by how much progress you make, how much confidence you instill in yourself, and how much better the overall experience is moving forward. But yeah, this is definitely a kind of like a schizo rambling video, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you at least thought it was funny. But yeah, that's it. Let me know if you guys have similar experiences, but other than that, have a good one.